All right, everyone, welcome back. And I am here this time with Rachel Cook. She has been on the show a few other times. She was here once to talk about a previous podcast that she used to work on. And then she has joined us with Ryan Pagella one time. And so this third time, she's here to talk about Run Disney. Run Disney is an event that I've always been really, really interested in, but I've never been able to do it. Either getting down to Orlando or getting to Anaheim is a little bit of a task. But Rachel is a local to the Orlando area. And so she's done a series of the Run Disney events. And so we have talked about doing this visit for quite some time. And then finally, uh, it just kind of fell into place. So, Rachel,
Mhm.
welcome back to Being a Fan of Disney, the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
And so, briefly, tell us kind of the your background or intro to Run Disney and how you got into doing Run Disney events.
Okay. Yeah. So I started off, I believe it was 2014 or 2015 was the first time that I signed up to do the Princess 10K, which they so Run Disney is it's like a company within the larger Walt Disney Corporation. It's run out of the theme parks. There, at least one of their offices is like on the Walt Disney World grounds. And they have several race weekends throughout the year. The big one is the Walt Disney World Marathon weekend. It's in January. And then at Disney World, they have three other weekends that they do. Disneyland has its own history. They used to do a couple race weekends a year, and then they stopped for a while because of some logistical issues. Now they have one again, and then there's also been races at Disneyland Paris. There's been races on Castaway Cay for the cruise ship, and then they've started a virtual race series as well. Um, so I wasn't a big runner for a while, and but I kept hearing how cool the Disney races were. So I decided to try out the Princess 10K about 10 years ago. And I trained, and it was very difficult, but it was a lot of fun. And I did a race pretty much every year, except during the pandemic when they closed down the in-person races, and I didn't think it was worth it to pay for the virtual ones. And then my last one was the Princess 10K coming full circle in 2013, not 2013, 2023. And then since then, I just haven't had as much time to be a runner. That has been like when I do exercise, just becoming a mom and life getting in the way just has made it like easier for me to focus on other forms of exercise. But it was really a way to get me off the couch. I'm a pretty sedentary person, working desk jobs and just being a nerd in general, doing a lot of reading and watching and playing video games and stuff. But I really enjoyed it. I would be willing to do it again at some point in the future. Um, and yeah, it's been quite a journey. I started off at the 10K, and then I've done 5Ks, other 10Ks, and I've done half marathons as well. And then one year I even was it 2 years in a row or just one year? I know at least once I've done the challenge where they call it the fairy tale challenge during Princess Weekend, where you run the 10K and the half marathon 2 days in a row, which was murder, but I felt very accomplished afterwards.
And thank you. The We were talking before we started recording. Like I used to run in events and in races. I lived in Austin, Texas for a while. And they had at that time there they had a lot of races. I think they were on the forefront of a lot of having a lot of races around the city before a lot of other cities had smaller races beyond just like a half marathon or marathon.
Mhm.
It was pretty much like every other weekend or something, you could do some type of race around the Austin area, which was really, really fun. When I then just kind of as I've gotten older, I haven't done it as much. I did the virtual races in 2020. And I did the challenge in 2020. Um, because I realized at that point I had stopped actually running to work out. I would go on walks because I was running slow enough that it was actually doing me more harm than good to run. And so I realized that for the 5K challenges, you could actually like you could walk or you could do anything
Hmm.
for
Hmm.
them. And so that was a way for me to kind of experience something from Run Disney. And they're real neat. The virtual races you have to go out on your own. They did build an online community that you like reported your times to, and you could go into chat rooms and things like that. They did playlists on Spotify and everything to help people through these virtual events. Um, I mean, it's nothing like being at a Run Disney event, I could
Hmm.
imagine. Um, Tell us what a Run Disney event is. Like you did mostly 10Ks,
Hmm.
it sounds like. So I guess kind of walk us through what a person would experience going to a 10K at a
Yeah.
Run Disney event.
And I've done like local smaller races as well. And I can tell you that it's like night and day. And so we were talking a little bit about cost beforehand. A Run Disney race is going to be uh astronomically expensive compared to what you're probably used to paying for a local race. And it's not just because it's Disney, it's because of like just the sheer scale of it and the fact uh like that you're on Disney property. And I can't, like I said, I can't speak for the one in Anaheim, but I know the one at Walt Disney World resorts or the ones at Walt Disney World resorts are entirely within Disney property because let's keep in mind Disney World property is like twice the size of Manhattan. It's huge. Not all of it is going to be in the parks, but they really do their best to make the like non-park parts of the course entertaining. Like they have DJs, they have characters, and they will also take you backstage to a lot of areas, which is really cool. So you get to see parts of the park that you don't normally get to see as a guest. Um, I know at Anaheim, because Disneyland Resort is so small, first of all, they don't do a marathon weekend there. The most they'll
Mhm.
do is a half marathon. Um, and a lot of it has to go through the streets of Anaheim. So that's why they had to pause it for a while because there was a lot of, I think, construction going on and something, don't quote me on that, but like something to do with like just the city of Anaheim wasn't happy about the race or something was going on there. But at Disney World, it's all on Disney property. So a lot of it will be in the park or like a decent, like, at least a couple miles of the race. But a lot of it is also just going to be on the roads and they're gonna have like they have marching bands playing, choirs will play, and a lot of unique characters that are usually themed to whatever like the theme of the race is, which is pretty cool. And also just like characters that you normally can't see. Like my favorite one I saw was a Darkwing Duck and Launchpad. uh
Mhm.
those are really hard to see. You don't see those a lot in the parks, and so I had to stop and get pictures with them. um the If you're used to, so that's like how it compares to like if you're used to like a local 5K. If you're used to like a Boston Marathon or something like that, if that's like kind of your like in terms of your knowledge of the racing world, it's also nothing like that. They do have very serious runners that tend to be like in the first corrals and that they tend to be the finishers, but there is no qualifier to do any of the races. You can Anybody with a credit card who is fast enough, because these do sell out within about an hour of going on sale, most of them, can sign up. The only thing you need is if you want to be in a good corral for the half or the full, you need to have some kind of proof that you have run a race like that before and that you ran at a certain pace. But other than that, like you can still run it. It doesn't matter. So they're not as competitive as those kinds as like your big name marathons are. And you're also going to see a lot of people dressed up that you probably won't see dress up for local races or for larger, more big name races either. And when I say dress up, it really runs the gamut. Like I have seen people in full body costumes. I don't know how they ran 26 miles like that. When I dress up, it's been more like I try to find actual athletic wear that more matches what I'm doing. So it's closer to Disney bounding than actual cosplay. But you'll see lots of people doing that. I've also volunteered for a few races as well, which is always a really fun and illuminating experience. And one of the things people really love about the races are medals. I have here my one that I got for the last 10K I ran. They used to be pretty generic, but they've really upped their game in the past few years. Uh, and every finisher gets a medal. And they're a really great, unique collectible item that you can't just buy uh at the stores in the parks either. So yeah, it's really unique. Oh, and like with the backstage areas too, they'll bring out like they're not just like showing you office buildings. I remember one we went backstage at Magic Kingdom and they had the Maleficent float from the parade there. One time I was backstage at Epcot and they had a Maelstrom boat there to for people to take a look at. This was when they were renovating it to be the Frozen, so they just I guess had an extra boat they wanted people to see. So you'll get to see a lot of really cool and unique things um that you wouldn't get to normally see. And just being at Disney World, the other thing to keep in mind is that these races happen incredibly early. I think I heard the marathon this year started at about 4:30 in the morning. Usually it's around 5 or 6 in the morning. They try to host them during times of the year that are a little bit cooler, but sometimes it's still a little too hot and they have to warn people about that. Sometimes it rains and they have to shorten the course at the last minute. Sometimes, like this year for the marathon, it's just very, very cold. But they still have to hold it very, very early in the morning as well, not just because of the heat, but because they are trying to minimize its interference with
Mm-hmm.
the regular guests' normal park day.
Yeah,
So
because you
so
you
it's a
do.
huge time and money commitment, and you do have to be willing to get up very, 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 very early.
Yeah. And because you do have to, I think most events end in Epcot, right? Or at
Mhm.
least I guess at least the parking lot of Epcot is where the actual finish line would be, correct?
I've seen it. Yeah, most of the time when I've run, the finish and starting lines have been in Epcot. I remember I ran the Food and Wine half marathon one year, and that's I believe that was my first half marathon, and at this point it was like 8 years ago. But I know it started at the sports complex. What's it called? World of Sports,
Yeah, ESPN.
ESPN, and ended in Epcot. And the other thing to keep in mind, like because at a lot of these local races, you just show up. Like you pay the fee online, but then you just show up and they give you your bib and usher you to the starting line. The Run Disney races, because of their scale, like you can't do that. So it's not just a commitment for race day, it's a
Mhm.
commitment like you have to come at least a day early. You have to go to they have that the ESPN complex, there's the bibs, and then that's where you get your shirt and all that. So it's like that's another reason why I've kind of dropped off that because I'm like I it's just so much.
Yeah.
There's so many moving parts to it. And then I go home and I just sleep the rest of the day because I got up so early and got all my steps in within an hour.
Yeah. Well, and what's so interesting to me about all of it is, and I would love to experience a Run Disney event at Walt Disney World.
Mhm.
That I would love to go see all of that. And I've told people I've never run a marathon. I've never run a half marathon. But I said if I ever ran a marathon, it would be the marathon at Disney
Mhm.
because my goal, I think in the marathon you have to finish in like 5 hours or something because
Yeah.
again you do have to, they
Yeah, it's when
you
I
have to
say
be out
there's
of the parks.
right, there's no qualifier to start to be in the race, but um they do have like pacing requirements, and if you don't meet them they sweep you from the course. So
Yeah.
they have a bus waiting that's that's blocking the way, and you get on the bus and you're taken to the finish line if you don't meet the
So
pacing requirements.
do I would because if I ever did a marathon, like 5K, 10K, that would be fine. But if I ever did the marathon, I would my goal would be to run between the parks. And then once I was in the parks, take it more easy. So I could
Hmm.
like do because along the way you could do like character meet and greets, you have pictures. I know
Yeah.
there are also opportunities to ride certain attractions
Not to my
in some of the
knowledge.
parks.
Not that I've ever seen. No.
Okay.
Maybe
Um,
other maybe, but not any of the ones I've done. I would remember that for sure.
I
But keep in
think
mind also a lot of the character meet and greets are outside of the park.
okay.
They're Epcot I know has had a few, but a lot of the times it's by the side of the road, like Snow White comes out of a literal trailer and you take pictures with her. Um, what's difficult about them is because of the pacing requirements, you really have to like be economical
Yeah.
about what you do. And they do get people through the lines fast. It's not like the meet and greets in the parks where you can like, really build up rapport. You're basically just like selfie and then you run. Um, and then there's a lot of photographers on the course as well that are going to take pictures of you, and getting those photos is really a lot of fun. Um, and it's a long day. And then when you're at the starting line, you also are going to just completely like feel like cattle. You're going to be literally put in a corral and ushered to the starting line, and they can only let so many people start at a time or you'll all run over each other. But they have a lot of entertainment designed to kind of like keep you moving, keep you distracted so that it doesn't feel like such a slog. But there's no way around the fact that you're in a huge crowd with thousands of people.
Yeah. Yeah. And what your last count, what approximately how many people do run in these events?
I don't know. That's a good question.
Yeah.
Thousands of people. And they experiment, like some of the times they'll do like just like 5 corrals and they'll just be really big. Other times they'll do like 12 corrals and they're smaller. Like it's really hard. It's definitely thousands of people. And each race is, I think, a little different with capacity depending on what the route is and how quickly they want to try to move people out. It feels like things are kind of changing all the time with this. Like they're always like trying out a new registration tactic. They're always like playing with different dates, different themes. So it's probably very Googleable, like the amount of people, but all I know, I'm not good at counting like crowds. So I'm like, it's a lot. It's just a
Yeah.
lot of people. However, when you're like leaving Epcot at the end of the night after fireworks, and you feel like you're packed like sardines, that's the number of people.
Okay.
But once you're on the race course, you
Yeah.
can spread out because you're across like an entire highway.
And now a message from Cody's Inner Dialogue. Hey, Cody. Yeah, what's going on, Inner Dialogue? Hey, I know you're talking about Run Disney with Rachel. Yeah, actually, that's what you are interrupting right now. We're having a really good talk. I have an idea. You're gonna love it. I'm sure I am. I love all your ideas. My ideas are great. Yeah. What's your idea? Inner Dialogue. Okay, so in the spirit of Run Disney, I propose that we hold the first Run Cody Inner Dialogue Marathon Park to Park. Whoa, that's a really long name. What is this thing? Okay, so you start at Magic Kingdom, right? You always gotta start at Magic Kingdom. Okay, what? You start at Magic Kingdom, and then you gotta ride 7 rides at Magic Kingdom, and then you leave Magic Kingdom, and you're gonna take the monorail over to Epcot. And once you get to Epcot, you gotta work your way around Epcot through World Showcase. You gotta ride every attraction at Epcot. Every attraction? Yeah, every attraction at Epcot. And then you gotta get on the Skyliner. You gotta take the Skyliner over to Hollywood Studios. Hollywood Studios? Yeah, Hollywood Studios. And then at Hollywood Studios, you gotta get off and you gotta ride Tower of Terror. You gotta ride Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, and you gotta ride Rise of the Resistance. Rise of the Resistance? That's a really long wait. Inner Dialogue. I didn't say this was gonna be easy, Cody. Yeah, I guess so. An issue though. What's that? We can't hold a race on Disney property. They're not gonna allow that. Really? No, definitely not. Definitely not. They're not gonna allow us to hold a race there. Okay, well, how about this? No, it's a look. we really got to get back. Okay, we've got to get back to the show. Thanks for the interruption. You made a good idea. Man, wasn't a good idea. Thanks for the interruption. Back to our show, everyone. I've always been fascinated with just in any type of road race anyway that you always start your the competitive runners are always starting first, so
Mhm.
there's no one in their way that they have to get around. um but everyone else who does not have kind of like a recorded time,
Mhm.
you have such a mixture of ability and such a
Yeah.
mixture of speed that somebody behind you, you might run a 12-minute mile and someone behind you is running like a 7-minute mile and they're like having to weave in and out. So my experience has always been at least the first 150, 200 feet or more of a race, or sometimes like quarter mile of a race is like
You're
you're
just trying to
kind of
get.
in the slog.
Yeah, yeah, it definitely takes like a good few feet before you can actually, when you cross the starting line, like I think a lot of people picture it like an Olympic like foot race where everybody just goes really fast, and that's just not how it works. You're going to be crossing with a huge crowd. You're really not going to have room to run. It is really not until like maybe the first 10 to quarter a mile, depending where you can actually start to move at the pace that you prefer to move.
So then when you would run the races, did you run the whole time, or did you
No.
walk, or did you stop and take pictures and stuff?
Every time's been a little different. I don't tend to take a lot of pictures. I'm just not a very good photographer. I know there another thing they have is like every mile marker, they have like a giant sign. It says mile 5, and it's got like a character. There's people who take pictures of every mile. I'm not one. I'm just like, I want to go home. I want to go back to bed. So I'm just going, if I see a character I really want to meet, I'll jump in that line. And then one thing I like to take photos of is like you start off the race, it's still dark out. And then especially if I'm like crossing into Epcot and seeing Spaceship Earth, like that's like a picture of Spaceship Earth at sunrise. You really can't beat that.
Mhm.
So that's like a reason I'll stop, or if I see like a cool prop that they've put out for people to look at. But I'm not like, I'm not there to be a tourist. I'm there to finish and go to sleep.
Yeah.
But I definitely can't run the whole way. I always do some kind of interval. There's been years when I'm like, here's my interval and it's this and this, and other years where I'm like, just feel how it feels and
Yeah.
do what I need to do.
Yeah. Um, And like when you finish, what events, because when you finish a road race,
Hmm.
there's always sort of like kind of the festival feel, there are food
Hmm.
trucks or there's some free things that they're usually giving away, but there's also food trucks and there's music playing. What what happens after a Run Disney race?
So there are usually bleachers at the finish line where people can sit. I think like the space is pretty limited. I don't know what the qualifiers are for sitting there. I think you either just have to get there really early, or there's some kind of like payment. You have to like you pay extra to be in the bleachers. They have these three people. And one of them I've seen at other local races, who like are basically the hype people and the hosts, and they will be at the starting line, and then they will be again at the finish line, and they're shouting out people's names as they cross. So that's pretty cool if you can hear that, but it's pretty loud, and there's a lot of people crossing at the finish line at the same time. Um, and then once you cross the finish line, you're kind of ushered into like a series of like modules, pit stops almost. So first is usually the metal, and they'll have people like with just like armfuls of medals. Some I think that lately they've moved to like actually giving them racks that they can put it on, because people used to have to just hold like dozens of these at a time. Um, you'll get a snack box usually. If you had to check items, because they have like a bag check, because you can't run with a bag, you go get that. If you want to take a picture with a medal, there's like a specific place to stop and take a picture. If you're doing a challenge, I did one of the times I volunteered was at the tent for the challenge, where I had to verify whether or not people completed both races so that they could get
Okay.
the challenge medal. And I thought so I thought it was going to be a very sophisticated computer system to like verify whether or not they did it. So I show up and they're like, okay. And they bring out like the oldest, bulkiest laptop I've ever seen in my life. And they open up the file explorer, just the general Windows like file, and they open up a little folder and they're like, okay, uh, search for the person by their bib number, and if their picture's in here, it means they qualify for the medal. Because if they didn't finish the race the day before in order to get the challenge medal, then they were deleted from
Uh-huh.
the folder. That was their that was their backstage super secret technology or figuring it out. I guess it's yeah. I work in software, so I was like, "Ooh, what did they make like to track this?" Nothing. They just used whatever free stuff was already in Windows, and it was honestly it was very easy to use because you just use the search and I just type the number and I would see their face. And I also had to verify it was the same person, like they didn't let somebody else take their bib and run the race for them. Because when you do a challenge, they take your when you go to pick up your bib, they take your picture so that they can verify
Mm,
that
okay.
the same person is running all the races. That's the only like thing. Otherwise, like if you even if you don't finish the race, you still get the medal. It's just the challenges you have to qualify for in order to get the medal.
Okay. So if you do get swept off the course, you do still
Then
get the medal.
you'll still get the medal. But if you were signing up to do a challenge, you won't get the extra challenge
Yeah.
medal.
Yeah.
But and so then so if you're doing the challenge, you do that. You get your bag, you get your snack, you take pictures. And then there's like usually a big, I kind of cordoned off asphalt area where people are like just kind of resting or doing stretches. And then there might be some characters and food trucks. Um, but other than that, people are usually like shuffling back into the buses because they have bus service that'll take you if you're staying at a Disney hotel. It's usually a charter bus, not a regular Disney bus, because they just have so many people they're moving at once. Or you can just go home. I usually just go home. But yeah, it's not as like I think a lot of people are expecting something a little more like stylish and luxurious, but they're very efficient at moving people, and it feels very efficient, which can be both
Hmm.
like a good and bad thing. But then like of course the if you want to like kind of keep the party going, they have they still have the ESPN area where they have like a lot of they'll have more characters there. They'll have merchandise, both Disney branded and like they bring in outside merchants. Um, and then even just like going to the parks with your medal on is really cool, like because people will congratulate you and the characters all want to look at your medal. So that's kind of part of it is getting to show off your medal at the parks afterwards, which I've done, but not most of the time I go home.
Yeah. Well, and I was gonna ask because for people, especially for people who are not local, if you're doing this, you're
You just have to drive yourself really
yeah.
early.
Yeah, well, and if you're doing this, you're there on you're probably doing a park, maybe not that day, but you're there on a vacation that this is part of your vacation.
Hmm.
Um, and so the times or the time that you did go to the park after the race, what was the experience of being in the park?
One time I fell asleep on a bench. I'm not kidding. We went to the Animal Kingdom. I distinctly remember this. Me and I had two friends, one of whom ran the race with me, and the other one was just there. And they were both from out of town, so I'd been staying with in their room just so I wouldn't have to drive. This is before I had my daughter. We were like, we go to Animal Kingdom, and then the friend who hadn't raced, I can't remember why she wasn't with us. I think she went to like do something specific, and we were like, we're gonna chill on this bench, and we just fell asleep on the bench.
Yeah.
Um, like I've always been like an old person, so I'm like, I'll trudge through the parks after the race, but there's definitely a cool energy to it. To like if you can maintain your like consciousness.
Hmm.
But a lot of times, like other times when I've stayed on property, I've definitely like gone back. Like I know people who will go straight from there to like the park,
Hmm.
or who will like maybe go back to their room and change, but then go straight to the park. because you are sweaty and gross, but
Yeah.
everybody's sweaty and gross at Disney anyway. Um, I usually need some kind of nap and shower before I can do that. So I think a lot of people are like that too, but if they do go to the parks, it won't be like till the evenings, and then
Okay.
maybe it's just like to have dinner or something. But there are people who will be like, they go with all their medals and they go right away and they want to get all the pictures, which is no shade to them. I think that's great, but my experience has always been when I do go, I am very tired and very sore.
Yeah. Well, and on going back to a point that you said about kind of the different things that they try out, and they're always kind of testing new things. I was always under the impression that Run Disney, it was in part created to tap into like the running culture, the like
Hmm.
physical culture. They do have ESPN Wide World of Sports at Walt Disney World, where they have a lot of AAU events. AAU is, actually housed at, or their office is at. It used to be it was the preview center for
Hmm.
Walt Disney World. That's where the AAU office is. I think they either have moved or are going to move. But I was always under the impression that Run Disney existed as well for the ability to test out different things. Like you mentioned, Disney is so good at moving at crowd control. I mean, you look at what people have now with the My Disney Experience app, and what Genie, the free service, what used to be called Genie Plus, now like Lightning Lane. Um, and the company's ability to move people around the parks to where they're trying to disperse crowds as much as possible. And I always thought, that's kind of Run Disney are these events that they do a few times a year that they make a lot of money off of. A
Hmm.
lot of people come in for these. But they're also like training in a way for other special events or for things that they're going to implement into the parks, whether that is a different form of crowd control, a different form of, um, you know, keeping track of people while they're on property, a different form of
Hmm.
entertainment that they're going to try. That was the impression I always had.
Hmm.
I'm not sure how accurate that
I
is.
don't think so. I would probably say probably not, because a lot of the technology that we see, um, or the techniques that I've seen, like I've ever seen really replicated in the parks, they use a completely different registration system, to register people for the races than they do to sell their tickets, for example. Different than buying tickets, I believe. Crowd control, like they don't use corrals, like they will get like literally like the temporary fences and move those around and I don't think they've ever really had need of that on regular park days. And then the tracking is not something they provide. It's provided by a local, it's actually provided by a local store called Track Shack. Um,
Okay.
which is very close to my house. And then like um I know for some special events that aren't taking place like in the parks themselves, like if they have characters who go to like the resorts, for meet and greets, not for like dining, but for like literal meet and greets at the resorts, they might use some trailers like that. But I think like I don't think Run Disney exists like to teach them any lessons about how to operate the rest of the parks. Run Disney, as far as I know, is its own separate entity. I imagine they like because like one of my like Disney is such a large corporation that it's basically like a series of companies. And I know that sometimes like one department or one company will have the budget to do something that another won't. And so it like can create problems. um, I I imagine they probably will have their own budget. And I don't even know if if they have to pay for the characters out of their budget and like how that all works. My impression has always been that like with the Epcot festivals, Run Disney exists sort of as a way to get people in there during less busy times of year, or that's how it was initially conceived, and now it's just become its own phenomenon where
Hmm.
like it's a culture, it's like a separate like, when we talk about Disney adults, I think like we lump Disney adults or Disney fans into like one big category, but the truth is there's like different like
Mhm.
categories, and like there's the people who are really into Marvel, the people who are really into the parks, the people who are really into the princesses. Run Disney is like its own category of Disney adults. And I don't say Disney adults like it's a derogatory term. I mean like just adult people who are interested in Disney as like an aesthetic or as a hobby.
Yeah,
So
and
I think that's kind of where it comes from, is like, let's get people into the parks. Let's see if we can make some extra money during these slower times of year.
well, and I know like some of the history of it is like, I mean, they've grown so much since starting this. It started, with one or two races, and they just kept adding and kept adding. Um, and it's one thing you said earlier that was interesting is about like Disneyland not having a marathon. And I looked it up right before we started talking and to make sure like what the races were at Disneyland. And yeah, they have a half marathon and a 10K. They don't they might have a 5K now. They don't have a marathon. And I wonder if be, when they expand Disneyland, when they are, this latest iteration of what this expansion is going to be at Disneyland, it is going to be a lot more land that they have. I wonder if then they will do something like that to where because then
Mm-hmm.
maybe they have ability to spend a little bit more time on Disneyland owned property and not like the city of Anaheim having to close down streets and everything.
I think they would still have to close down streets. The parts of the race that go through the parks are always the narrowest.
Okay.
And I highly doubt, like, are they buying more land in Anaheim?
Well, remember this, what was it like Project Forward or something? Project Disney Forward
Yeah, I
is
don't remember the details though.
they are I want to say it's almost as though they're doubling their footprint.
Mm,
Where Disneyland and California Adventure are, and then the where the Disneyland Hotel is, I believe it's either it's either south of where California Adventure is now or west of where the Disneyland Hotel is.
hmm.
They're having a lot more. There is a very sizable portion of land, and they also are taking up more room where they're going to have more land on Catella Boulevard.
Okay.
Um, I think like what's on Catella, they're going to put in more parking garages and
Yeah.
everything. But there is, as far as what is going to be developed into the parks or is supposed to be part of the parks, it is a very sizable portion of
Yeah.
land that they're acquiring.
Yeah, it would depend on how the land is used and how much of it would be safe for foot traffic, or usable by foot traffic. I'd be really curious. My gut tells me it's still not going to be enough to not have to
Yeah.
rely on Anaheim for at least a decent portion of the race. I don't think they'll ever get to the point where they can do a full 26-mile race, but they could potentially have more of the 13 K race on their own property and not
Yeah.
have to rely on Anaheim as much.
Um, what what's so cool to me about Run Disney at especially at Walt Disney World is that it does occur entirely on Disney property.
Hmm.
And we've spoken many times about like that surface level fan and then somebody who wants to do a deeper dive or if you go to the parks and you just want to experience the parks and you want to see things, you can do that. If you want to go to the parks and look for different details and the hidden Mickeys and all of these different things, you can do that as well. I feel like Run Disney allows people to do that as well because there are even people who know how much land Walt Disney World covers. You have, you've you've actually stepped foot on such a small portion of that land.
Yeah.
Um, and so like Run Disney, you are able to see the behind the scenes, and you're able to
A
see
little bit,
the
yeah.
access points between the
Hmm.
parks, which I think is
Now,
really neat also.
yeah, running, my favorite is when you run into the back portion of Epcot, like you run behind Test Track and then you go through World Showcase, and they've had you go into like the guest part of World Showcase
Mm.
uh through they've done it, I've done it through a few different, like there's like one in China, one in Norway, and it just kind of depends on where they want to direct traffic that year. Most of the, I will say, most of like the non-park running is on roads that you can just drive on a normal
Hmm.
day. They're going to be completely blocked off to traffic. You're very safe, but it's like there's been times where I'm like, oh, I ran down this road and I'm driving down it now. But yeah, so it's not like it's you're still running a road race on a foot race on a regular road. It's just that it's Disney, and so if you've ever wanted to use a porta potty on the side of the road that leads you into Magic Kingdom, then you're gonna get to do that. But yeah, but you do get to see, like, yeah, that's how they get you into the parks most of the time, is not in these races, through the is not through the turnstiles
Yeah.
like you do in the when you're a normal guest. It's through some kind of backstage access area, which is my favorite part, is seeing that.
And now a message from Cody's Inner Dialogue. Hey, Cody. Yeah, what's going on, Inner Dialogue? Valentine's Day is coming up. Yeah, yeah, I know that. And you know what makes great gift for Valentine's Day? Well, people, I think people usually do like candy and flowers and sometimes like stuffed animals and everything. Yeah, 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 whatever. Uh, Being a fan of Disney the book makes a perfect gift for Valentine's Day. Oh, yeah, thanks. Thanks. That's a good idea. Yeah, it's got tons of information in there about the parks and about your love of the parks and about Disney and other people's love of Disney. Yeah, yeah, it does. And it talks about Valentine's there. No, no, actually, I gotta correct you. I don't write about Valentine's in the book. You don't? No, have you read it? Of course I've read it. Then you would know that Valentine's isn't included in the book. Do you want to sell these books? Yes, yes, I do. Being a fan of Disney the book, available on Amazon, and it makes a great gift for any occasion, especially Valentine's. Okay, especially Valentine's. Thanks, Inner Dialogue. Back to our show, everyone. Yeah, one of my favorite races I've ever run was actually through the Memphis Zoo. And so you started and you began the race in the Memphis Zoo.
Hmm.
And then most of it, in the park that surrounds the zoo, but then you finish like at the opening gate and everything. So it was really cool to be able to see those types of things. And you did go in areas that you typically wouldn't when you're walking through. And so that would be really, really appealing. I have a theory about like things like Run Disney. The last time and access to behind the scenes. Um, a lot of people know the story of why Walt Disney World was created or why they started looking for like a Disneyland East. The story that's told,
Hmm.
it's who knows how accurate it is, but it's at least the one that's told by the company is, Walt Disney seeing someone walking through a land out of character. They were dressed for a different land and they were walking through, and
Hmm.
that broke the storytelling aspect. And so he wanted more land. And so this last trip that I was on, that I went to Walt Disney World, I was taking a lot of videos and doing a lot of videos for my classes. And I was riding the Skyliner and I started thinking about, when you're on the Skyliner, especially when you come up to Epcot, like you see a lot of behind the scenes of World Showcase. You literally like, when you are flying into or coming into the station, you are seeing the back of the France Pavilion and you're seeing a lot of the access points to the France Pavilion. Um, and it made me think that, there's the change in the original reason Walt Disney World was built is so people did not kind of leave this fantastical world and didn't have
Hmm.
that fantastical world and that story broken to now where you do have a lot of access to behind the scenes. And I think a lot
Hmm.
of that has to do with the Disney fandom that people want to know more about how it works. They want to know, they want to experience Disney, but they're also interested to see how it works. And so when
Hmm.
like when they opened MGM Studios and they took you on the studio backlot tour. I mean, that was kind of like a initial introduction to,
Yeah.
yes, that was staged as a park, but also like if you were on a, studio, this might be what it looks like.
Yeah.
Um, I think Run Disney adds to that as
Yeah,
well.
I think a lot of it because so that brings up an interesting thing where like my thought on that would be a lot of it is just how we as a society like interact with media differently now than in the past. Where like yeah, in Walt's time, it would have been like really weird and a poor like really shocking to see something like not on theme. Whereas now like I think and maybe this whole started when like Universal in California first started doing tours of their studio where it kind of changed like where people became much more interested in how the sausage was made and with different types of media. And I'm not just, like there's movies. We want to know how theme parks are done. We want to
Hmm.
know how video games are made. We like, this access to this very interesting creative world that most of us don't get to work in, I think is really fascinating. But yeah, you're right. We did go from like, I don't want to the magic ruin for me to like I want to know exactly how it's created. But
Hmm.
there definitely still are people. Like I did the Keys to the Kingdom tour once, and for those listeners who don't know, it's a tour that you can do in the Magic Kingdom that takes you to like some backstage areas and shows you like gives you like information about the parks that you might not normally get, lets you see things you might not normally see. And our tour guide like told us at the beginning that there are people here that are not on this tour. We're gonna be walking through the park and just try to be mindful of that the verbiage he used was they're here for a different type of magic than you are. So you want to know like how somebody gets picked to be a princess, but there might be like a kid walking by who doesn't know like that the princesses are
Hmm.
picked. So like he had like implored us to just kind of be mindful of that when we asked questions like in front of other guests. So yeah, I think like that is like there is definitely a subset of fans and just people in general who are like, I think that's really cool to see like and that's like the same kind of people who are excited when a bride breaks down and they have to evacuate because
Hmm.
it means that they get to see the
Yeah.
animatronics like not moving normally or they get to see like parts of the parts of the ride illuminated in a way that they wouldn't normally get to see. I remember once we had to get evacuated off of Journey into Imagination, and it was in the computer scene, and there were like the red tennis shoes, and I got to see like they put bubble wrap inside of the tennis shoes so that they'd look like more full.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. And to this day, I'm like, what? That's so cool. Just some bubble wrap. So yeah, I think that that's part of the appeal of it is like, and that's something I didn't know before I ran my first race is that you're not just running through the parks, you're not just running through the streets around the parks. You're getting to see things that you don't normally get to
Hmm.
see, and that is a really big appeal and a part of the reason I think why people are willing to spend the money. I think if it was just like a race down World Drive, I don't think people would be as interested in it.
Yeah. Um, the Actually the last time I was at Walt Disney World, I was in line for Journey into Imagination when it broke down. And so like we had to
Oh
leave
no.
line. I was unfortunate. That's the closest I've ever been to like being evacuated off of a ride. I was not in a car yet. There were probably like 20 people in front of me. And but we did get taken to like kind of just a different hallway where they
Right.
they gave us all like the passes or whatever. But that's the closest I've ever been to being evacuated off of a ride. So the next thing I want to talk about is um, we talked about kind of what the races are at Disney, what to expect when you go. Um, but next, I want to talk about maybe. some advice that you have
Hmm.
for people who would be interested in going to a Run Disney race. And again, Rachel is local, so it's different as far as some of the planning aspects. I mean, if
Hmm.
I went, then obviously I'm paying to get there. I'm staying in a hotel. I'm probably staying for a few days or a week so I can go to the parks as well. Um, but as far as like kind of what people could expect, what advice do you have for anybody?
Okay. Um, it's gonna be more uncomfortable than you probably think. It's probably gonna be more humid than you think it's gonna be. Um, be prepared to go with the flow. This is something I'd say to anybody going on any Disney vacation, but especially Run Disney. Race courses get shortened all the time. Your health is really important. You're going to lose a lot, especially if you're not used to exercising in a humid environment. You can do all the training you can at home, but if you're not used to the humidity here in Florida, you're going to lose a lot of water really fast. Take advantage of the water stops. Keep in mind, yeah, and just listen to your body. Don't feel the pressure to like force yourself. Um, and keep in mind it's not refundable. And you do have to sign up really, really far in advance. It's not transferable, not refundable. Um, you have to pay attention to when the signups start and be willing to, and they always happen during the workday. So like 12 o'clock on a Tuesday, be willing to get on the computer and try and just like even there, like lower your expectations, just go with the flow. If you get it, you get it. If not, you just try again for the next one. Um, because that like run like the social media, the Run Disney social media on every registration day is always like a complete madhouse of people like saying I didn't get in, I got kicked out. It happens. They're doing their best. They're trying to process a lot of people at a time. Um, it's just going with the flow is going to make you so much happier. Like if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, and then the day of just like pacing yourself. Um, like I could. That's like the biggest piece of advice. I could say that till I'm blue in the face. Like do like you don't have to like train like super hard like you're gonna go for an Ironman, but have some kind of training and try to make it outside and as in conditions as similar as possible to the Florida weather because I've known people who like they didn't train outside and they're trying out a new like pace on their first day like a new interval pace like it's not a day to try something new. It's probably not a day to try to get your personal best especially if you're going to stop and take pictures of stuff but just like try to have like as much fun as you can because it's going to be a very expensive even if you're just doing the race it's going to be a very expensive very unique experience and the last thing you want is to feel like you ruined it for yourself somehow.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's good. Thank you. And the uh, one thing that I want to mention with just kind of the scope of what Run Disney is now, they have for people interested, they when you sign up for a race, do you can follow their like training program. They have a training program that
Yes,
you
they
can
do.
follow. You can even have um, Run Disney shoes. You mentioned people dressing up, sometimes in full costume, sometimes more in like a bounding manner. They used to have a sponsorship with New Balance, where they would have Run Disney shoes. Now, I think maybe at this race coming up in the springtime is when they're going to introduce their new relationship with Brooks, or that's going to be the first time that somebody could actually purchase the Brooks running shoes. Um, what are some of the most, on that topic, what are some of the most fun dress ups that you have seen while you've been there?
Yeah, so one year I volunteered for one. They used to have a Star Wars weekend. It's been replaced by the springtime surprise, so they just do a different theme every year. But it used to be Star Wars. Um, one time I saw a guy dressed as Dark Helmet from Spaceballs. That
Hmm.
was my favorite. And then another guy was carrying a prop from the movie. Like he got it was like the prop. It was a prop um that was it was like I guess they found like an ice cream maker for like a scene. I don't know in which one, but it was from the original trilogy. And they were like, this looks futuristic. We'll have a guy running
Yeah.
around with it. And
Yeah.
it's an ice cream maker. So the guy found that same ice cream maker, not the one they used in the movie, but like the same brand and make and everything. And he carried it with him while he ran. Um, I've um I've seen people dressed as like people do all kinds of costumes. Usually, like if the race will have a theme. Like this one I did was like Beauty and the Beast. So you saw like a lot of people dressed as Belle or Gaston. I did guess there was another race I ran that was also Beauty and the Beast. They only have so many princesses, so they have to recycle them a lot. And I was Gaston, and all I did was I got a red running shirt, and then I took like yellow felt and I just cut it into
Mhm.
triangles, and that was my costume. Um, but it was still fun. It was still fun. And I remember one time I saw a woman dressed as and I believe this was the marathon. So she ran the whole race like this, was Mrs. Banks from Mary Poppins with the Votes
Oh,
for Women
wow.
sash. It's what's really interesting is, and I like you don't really notice this until unless you volunteer, because when you're a runner, you're just with whatever people
Hmm.
you're running with and you're not seeing the full scope. But when you volunteer, you get to see like everybody. So I would notice like the first few runners, first of all, like when I was doing water stops and stuff, they wouldn't even stop. They're just going. The
Hmm.
first few runners are just going. Uh and they're not dressed up at all. They're Olympic trained athletes. They're there to do the race, and maybe they're getting a sponsorship or something. I'm not sure. And then as the race goes on, you're seeing more and more costumes, because I've noticed that the like the slower the runner, the more casual they are and the more willing they are to like do more elaborate
Hmm.
costumes, because that's what's fun for them, is getting to like kind of dress up and do that. And usually sometimes it's like really simple, like with my guest on, and sometimes it's like a bit more elaborate than that what they would probably do in the parks. Um, but it's always really fun to see people do that.
Yeah. Um, so before we get to our rapid questions, the last question I really had here before the rapid questions is like what are some memories that stick out
Mhm.
for you from your Run Disney experiences?
So yeah, so I the costumes are always really good memories. Like my first one that I my first half marathon I did was the Wine and Dine marathon, and I did Captain EO. So I got like a tank top that had the like the little symbol on it, and I also got a an original plush of Fuzzball, and I carried that. I ran 13 miles carrying this heavy imbalance because of the tail sweaty thing, but it was worth it. So just like honestly, like crossing the finish line never doesn't make me cry. Seeing Epcot on the like during sunrise, or passing through the castle during sunrise, uh stuff like that. Meeting Darkwing Duck the year that I did, I think that was also the first half marathon I did. There was Darkwing Duck. Like it's I don't think any one thing like stands out to me, but it's just always like I always like the weeks leading up to it, I'm like, I haven't trained enough. I'm tired. What did I do? I can't not go because I spent all that money and I have to get up early. But then like getting there, you're like, oh, I get it. I remember now why myself
Hmm.
from 9 months ago, because you do have to sign up 9 months in advance. I remember why I decided to do this again.
Yeah. Um, Anything you think we have that I've missed that would be important for people to know about Run Disney?
Well, we've covered the price. That's the big thing. It's going
Yeah.
to be some really great sticker shock. How early you have to get up. Pay attention to those times. I have seen a lot of people on like message boards and social media groups just act shocked that they have to get up that early. They do tell you, I believe, when you sign up, and if you don't, you heard it from me. You have to get up really early. If you are staying in a Disney hotel, they will bring you to the race course, but you have to get up really early. Um, but I think those are the big things, is like if you can do it at least once, it's a ton of fun, even if you don't do like if you're just doing like one of the 5Ks. um there's a big piece of trivia that a lot of people don't know about, which is the balloon ladies. So I said like they do have mile like pace limits. It's technically 16 minutes per mile, but they don't start counting until the last person crosses the starting line. And the last people to stop cross the starting line are always the balloon ladies. And
Mhm.
these are women. They don't get paid by Disney, as far as I know. They're just like this is like what they do. They wear giant like balloons on their backs so you can see them, and they are there specifically to make sure that you know like how close you are to getting swept from the race. So if you see the balloon ladies behind you, it means that you maybe want to pick up your pace if you don't want to get swept. Some people don't mind getting swept. I know people who run the longer races knowing they will probably get swept. Um, but if you don't want to get swept, then that is how you will know is if you see some ladies with giant balloons, um, you are in danger of getting swept if you fall behind them. But yeah, and like the costumes are always great. You can go to like I like personally those are the costumes that stick out in my mind, but you can go to like their social media pages and see like dozens of cool like I've seen people dress up as like different monorail cars, like stuff, but those are the ones that I've seen in person that like really stand out to me as really really cool.
Very
And it's like a
cool.
big party. Like it's complete adrenaline rush. You're gonna be like, this is the greatest thing ever. And then the next time it comes time for you to do it again, you're gonna be like, why? Why did I do this?
Yeah. Well, and you're completely right that it is its own segment
Yeah.
of Disney fandom as well. I know people will, um, this is part of their annual budget.
Yes.
This is when they go to Walt Disney World,
Yes.
is to do these races. And so they've built that in, so they expect that. Um, just one thing I just thought of, the races, none of none of the races actually go through any of the resorts or
Mm,
downtown or Disney Springs, correct?
not Disney Springs. I've done the 10K, the Princess 10K, and I haven't done every single race, but I do know the Princess 10K because I've done that one several times. Does go around the boardwalk and the Yacht and Beach
Okay.
Club.
Okay.
Which is probably the coolest one because then like the rooms for the boardwalk and the rooms for those resorts that are facing the walking area are like it must be so cool to stay in there and just go
Yeah.
out in your balcony and cheer people on.
Well, and come to think of it, I think I've seen many pictures of Lou Mangello and
I've seen him
WDW
on the
radio.
courses too. Yeah.
That's yeah, that
Yeah.
that appears to be where they always are, is
Yeah.
on
He's
the boardwalk
I've
area.
I've seen him there. Yeah. I've seen him in other spots, but yeah, I usually see him and his crew there when I've done the 10K. Yeah. So that's the only resort I believe that it goes on currently. Um, maybe no, I don't think it goes to Grand Floridian. I think yeah, I'm pretty sure. Don't quote me, but I'm pretty sure it's just the boardwalk and yacht and beach clubs.
Okay. I would love at some point for Disney to have some sort of tracking system that just like in a normal day or in a park visit day, people could track how much they walk and get some sort of recognition for that. Or like if how much
Feels
they
like they should be able to add that to the app,
yeah,
to the
like I mean you
existing
get,
app.
like it's easy enough like hey, today you walked 10 miles. Here's, you
Yeah.
get this special like kind of badge or whatever
Yeah.
to post on social media when you get back or that day. So um, all right, I have five rapid questions. Some of them we've have sort of talked or sort of touched on earlier.
Mhm.
So for those, we're gonna try to maneuver around to get maybe some slightly different answers. But the first one is do you have a favorite Run Disney memory or two or three if you can't narrow it down?
My favorite ones.
Yeah.
Definitely finishing my first half marathon. The first time getting to see Epcot at sunrise. I remember like I've seen it several times. It's always beautiful, but the first time I didn't even know it could look this good. Seeing the Maelstrom boats backstage because Maelstrom had just closed and I really loved it. Um, and like I don't usually stop for characters, but getting to meet Darkwing Duck was really cool because that was one of my favorite shows as a kid. So those are like the top highlights for me.
Okay. And all the ones that you've done, do you have a favorite? Like, is there one Run Disney event or time that you did a Run Disney event that stands out to you as a favorite?
Um, I don't know. I've done a lot, and the last one was a while ago. But like a couple years ago. But there's been a few that I wish I had gotten to do. Like there's some that are like relay challenges and stuff like that I had to they either stopped doing or I just didn't sign up for it in time. I would say like the Wine and Dine half marathon in 2016 uh was my first half marathon, and that's probably my favorite one I've ever done. It's probably my favorite one in terms of the outfit I wore for it, the Captain EO outfit. And like my favorite in terms of just like the feeling I got from doing it, and um the sheer amount of like, because I had only done 10Ks and 5Ks before that. So you get to see like so much more uh for that one. And I've done a couple of the princess halves too. And I feel like the courses for those get a little more narrow at times. So that one just felt like a really perfect blend of like of like park time versus off park time.
Okay. All right, the next one is I know you've talked about Darkwing Duck, and you talked about Launchpad. Other than those two, what is either the most unique or your one of your favorite characters, or two or three again, that you have seen on the race course?
Hmm. I think that's definitely one of the more unique ones. They'll bring out like I know I've seen like Miko from Pocahontas. Um, I don't know. I'm not usually paying attention to characters. I'm not a big character person. I didn't become like a big character person until my daughter was born. Um, like it's definitely got to be them as my. Those are definitely not the top like unique characters that are on the courses, but those are the ones that stand out to me. I would probably go like crazy if I saw like Max, or man, what I wouldn't give for like a Figment like puppet meet and greet on the course if they did like a more nostalgia themed
Hmm.
one. But a lot of them like are like they do unique ones, but a lot of them are like characters that are not super hard to see. Like they have a lot of princesses. I've seen like a lot of the times like it's Mickey and Minnie, but like in an outfit that you don't normally get to see them in.
Yeah.
Um, or they'll do like more sidekick characters like Jiminy Cricket. You don't get to see Jiminy Cricket too much. Like I've seen like Geppetto or stuff like that. Um, yeah, I'm not a good resource for characters because I don't pay as much attention, and most of the time I'm just so scared of getting slowed down and swept that I'm like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
gotta go, I gotta go, I gotta go.
Have you ever seen anybody on the race course that has like bounded or cosplayed as Figment and Dreamfinder?
The first race I ran, I bounded as Figment.
Oh, okay,
Um,
cool.
yeah, I did. I had like little ears that I or little horns that I made. I got a like a purple and because it was the Princess 10K, so everybody was wearing tutus, and I am not a big princess person, so I was like, I'll do a tutu, but it's gonna be Figment. So I got like a an orange and purple tutu for that one, and I think I made wings too. Or maybe I
Okay.
just reused them. I just reused them from my Halloween costume because I had done the Disney Halloween party that before it. So I don't think I wore my wings for that, but I did have the horns and the tutu.
Okay. And then the last two kind of they sort of go together. Um, as far at first, what is your favorite Run Disney outfit that you have gone as?
It's definitely Captain EO.
Oh, okay. The last one, your favorite one that you have seen someone else bound or cosplay as.
That I have seen with my own two eyes and not on like social media.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
definitely has to be Dark Helmet,
Okay.
which is not a Disney costume, but I just was very impressed by his commitment. He had like the full like gigantic helmet and everything.
Yeah. Um, well, thank you so much for joining. Thank you for telling us about Run Disney. As I said, this is something I've been interested in for a long time, but have never done other than the one year doing the virtual races. Um, and so I really appreciate you coming and talking about your experiences with it, kind of helping people maybe plan for or realize what is going to go into the planning.
Mhm.
Where is where's a good place for people to contact you if they have questions or if they just want to follow more of what you're doing?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram and Threads and Blue Sky. Rachel does words, Rachel does words. I also have a website, tapestrywritingsupport.com, where I offer editing and tutoring services there for writing. But yeah, you can feel free to contact me with questions about that. I'm by no means an expert, but I've done a number of these races and I know like what the general experience is going to be like for the average person. And what the difference is between a Disney race versus like your local hometown's 5K.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Rachel. This
Sure.
was a lot of fun and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much, Cody. Bye.
Bye.